We all set?
Yeah.
Good to go. Good evening, everyone. I have 6:02 and a quorum of commissioners, so I will open up the Mashpee Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, September 21, 2023. Tonight, we're meeting in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. Our meeting is being broadcast live on local cable channel 8. They changed that from 18, right? 8. And streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we begin tonight's meeting, if you would like to join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started, I'm going to take a brief moment of silence tonight for our conservation agent, Drew, who has lost his father. So if you would just remember him, that would be nice. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Drew. All right. I will begin with public comment. If there is anyone here tonight or online that would like to address the commission for any issues that are not related to agenda items that we have posted for tonight's meeting, this would be the time. Good
Hello,
evening,
Colton
sir.
Atkinson from 112 Algonquin. I went to the Community Preservation Committee and suggested an idea that was kind of a resurrection of the Mashpee Greenway project, as well as a further extension to connect West Mashpee to the recreation area of the ball fields and the pickleball courts, as well as John's Pond and the community park over here, through the Mashpee Wildlife Refuge, through a network of trails that could be accessible by bike or stroller or wheelchair. And I wanted to see if this group would also support that project. I got a fairly favorable response from them. The project would probably also incorporate the planned trails extension that would start just south of 151 and go south towards Falmouth, as well as east to the Mashpee Commons, and then connect East Mashpee with the Commons through that area by the pond that I forget the name of right now. But I just wanted to know if that would be something this committee would support, or if I'd be kind of turning my wheels without making any progress if I tried to pursue that.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps something, if you would provide us something in writing, it would be helpful, and then
Okay.
the commission can kind of review that and take it from there.
Okay,
Be a
will
good
do.
Start, yeah.
Yeah, any maps would be helpful.
Yeah, I was just going to say, some type of a diagram. It doesn't have to be professional, but some type of a diagram which shows the pond you didn't mention by name. And again, the different areas that you wanted to network together. That would be
Okay,
great.
will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Anyone else for public comment? No, I guess we're good then. Okay. Let me start with the approval of the meeting minutes for September 7th, 2023. Voting on those minutes would be Paul Colombo, Stephen Cook, Marjorie Claproot, and Sandra Godfrey. Did you folks have enough time to look at those? I know they just came out the other day, but
Yeah, no, looks good. I have no changes.
good with it? You're all set? I had one minor revision in our discussion of, I gotta remember, 61 Shoestring Bay. It's stated in the minutes that I referred to Regulation 60. I don't think we even have a 60. It should be 16.
Oh, 16, all right.
16, 16, 60, I guess it sounds close to being the same. So that should be 16. Everything else that I read in there looked to be exactly the way it occurred, so I'm all set with that, other than that one edit. So I,
Familiar with the regulations. All right, I just.
All good.
what's, okay. So I would accept the motion then to accept the minutes as presented, other than that one edit.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion, further discussion on those before I call? Okay, Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes as well. Marjorie?
Yes,
Thank you. Okay, so those minutes are good to go. 6 o'clock. Want to go right into the hearings, Drew, or do you want to do that discussion first, or
Go into the hearings.
go to the hearings, get them out of the way?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to now call the 6 o'clock hearing for 275 Quiniquisette Avenue, Southworth Mashpee Properties LLC, proposed construction and maintenance of a 14 single-family homes with paved driveways, sidewalk drainage systems, and associated utilities. Representative Baxter Nye Engineering and Surveying. This is continued from May 4th, June 15th, July 13th. This is an NOI DEP 433237. We have a request from the applicant to continue to October 19th at 6:03. And that is to provide updates on the most recent correspondence. Oh, Drew is going to
Yeah,
provide
I
those.
can clarify.
So I'll turn that over to you.
So I'll try to remember this as best I can because it's a lot of information.
There is a lot.
So I did speak with Matt Eddy, just to kind of summarize the status of this, is they are planning, they have a continuous date with the planning board. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's before October 19th, for another set of revised plans, I think mostly centered on the stormwater runoff. And so what they anticipate is submitting those plans to the planning board, having that deliberated. Our next available meeting, those plans will have been done and can be submitted, and they can come in to kind of present those to the commission. And then that can be the kickoff for the peer review after that. So there wouldn't be any, decision-making on October 19th. Really, the purpose of that continuance date is to present the revisions, allow the commission to have them peer reviewed, make a motion for the peer review to commence. And then I believe it would be another couple of weeks for the peer review to be complete. Shouldn't take much longer than that. And then, so at October 19th, they'll request another continuance based on how long the peer review may
peer
take.
review itself.
And I'll find out from LEC exactly what they estimate that timeline would be. So based on their feedback, we'll know what that continuance date will be from October 19th.
Okay.
So that's the long and short of it.
Okay.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
has it been changed to 12 single families?
It has been reduced to
So why
12.
does it always say 14 still? Does that just have to be that way, or?
Because
or is
because
it
planning
correct?
board hasn't really, I think that's,
So it
But we all
was-
know it's 12.
The way it
not
was
14.
filed, and we opened the hearing, so it's, the
Yeah.
hearing's just
So
repetitive.
it stays that
yeah.
way.
But it is anticipated to be 12 reduced. Maybe even lower than that. I'm not
Oh, okay. Just curious. All right, thank you.
And I wanted to clarify an issue as well with all of the information that's gone back and forth with 275 Quiniquisette. The last time we met, and it wasn't requested for a continuance, was May 4th. And in that meeting, it was made very clear to the commission from Matt Eddy that he did not want us to move ahead. In fact, in the May 4th meeting, we didn't even have a peer review contract. That was the night that there was a motion for the peer review, and that carried. We went through with the paperwork and ended up with LEC Environmental. They're going to do the review and have the contract. I think that contract is still valid after this length of time.
It
I
is.
hope it is.
Yeah, it's open and they understand.
It's
They're
open-ended.
they're waiting for the go-ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
And then since that meeting, we have not met every meeting that we've had scheduled, it has been requested to be continued. So this has always been at the request of the applicant, not the commission. There seems to be a misunderstanding between boards that we're waiting for them and they're waiting for us and everybody's waiting for each other, and that's not the case. The case is that we're all set to go. We have been since we signed that contract with LEC.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll resolve whatever they need to and we move ahead. Okay?
So I do have a question on the
Sure.
letter from the town planner that you
Yeah.
sent us. So
Yes, I-
it seems like there's a little back and forth in his letter, too.
Right.
Because one sentence, he says that it would be logical to wait for the planning review on the bedroom count before we do anything.
Yeah.
He mentioned that in two sentences, and then, towards the end of his letter, he mentions that, the planning board won't wait to do anything, wait till our peer, wait till our peer review is completed. So it seems like there's two issues, one is, yes, our peer review, which,
Yeah.
I know we can continue and keep doing what we're doing, but
Right.
it seems like, okay, that's one issue, and then the bedroom count's a second issue.
Yes.
So,
Which has nothing to do with us.
no, it doesn't. But then,
But I-
do we, we'll do a peer review, and hopefully by the time the peer review's done, the bedroom count issue should be clarified?
clarified,
for us?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So that, to me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do it that way.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, okay, because if the bedroom count goes against Willow Bend's favor, they could withdraw that application.
Exactly.
They could, sure.
Okay. I just, there's like competing things in here, this letter.
But I think in the final part of the letter, he does say that planning board, understands, wants the Conservation Commission to complete their review.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Last message I
So it's-
gleaned out of this.
Yeah, which is no issue for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see that at the end, but we're still waiting for the applicant to tell us to go ahead
Yeah.
and do that review.
Exactly.
Why waste the money if
Yeah.
they're not ready? So it's not our decision, it's the
Oh, no,
applicant's.
Yeah.
The applicant.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
All right, so with all of that, I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing until October 19th at 6:03.
That's right. Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for 275 Quinquisset Ave, Southworth, Mashpee Properties LLC, to continue their hearing to October 19th at 6:03 PM.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Aaron. Any further discussion before I call for a vote? Hearing none. Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
yes,
Thank you, and I vote yes as well. So that motion carries unanimous. We'll meet on the 19th at 6:03. Okay. I'm going to move on to the 6:03 hearing for 8 Nahoyden Road, Edward J. Farley, proposed restoration plantings. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a notice of intent, and the DEP number is 433250.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I can recuse myself from this hearing since Mr. Farley is my client.
Okay,
So
thank
I'll
you,
just sit here
Steve.
quietly.
Okay, and with that recusal, we still have 4 voting commissioners with Marjorie online, so
Correct.
we're set to proceed. Okay, good evening, sir. Can I have your name for the record, please?
Good evening. Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant and property owner for this project, Ed Farley, who I believe is also joining us through the Zoom connection. So this project is a notice of intent through an enforcement order. The applicant removed 26 trees on his property without knowing that he was under jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. The jurisdiction portion here is that the entire property is in the flood zone. There are 2 flood zones here. The eastern portion or southeastern portion is the velocity zone, and the rest of the property is an AE zone. So he did remove 26 trees from the property. The staff from Conservation went to the site and fined him for the removal of those trees, issue an enforcement order, and part of the enforcement order required the applicant or the homeowner to file a notice of intent to rectify what happened. So part of that was to have a plan engineered. So that's how we got involved. So we prepared this existing condition plan with the stumps of the removed trees that we located. The replacement of the removal is at a ratio of 2-to-1. So for 26 trees, we're replanting 52 trees. The plan right now shows one specific species, but the intent is to have a variety. Right now, we just have eastern red cedars as what's going to be proposed at 2 different sizes. But the homeowner is looking to invest into some variety. So there's a couple other species that he's working with his contractor, and I believe the contractor might be Fieri Tree Care. And we're looking into probably some American hollies and some other trees to kind of replace some of the cedars that are being proposed. Just a little background for how this came to be. So the homeowner noticed that a lot of the trees were underneath the utility lines. So he did contact Eversource and some of the other utility companies to deal with them. Some of them were already topped at the bottom of the lines. And I just brought a couple of pictures of what they were. Not to change the proposal that we have, but just so that the board sees what was happening. Nevertheless, the homeowner understands that it was under jurisdiction. He did the cutting without any permits, so he's going to replant the 52 trees. At the moment, there is no additional work being proposed. The homeowner does have some other work that he's planning on doing, but that is not part of this application. So this application is just to conform with the condition from that enforcement order to restore the site with the 52 trees. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer.
Okay, thank you. Are these the same tree or different trees?
Those are 2 different trees.
2 different.
Yeah. There were others like that, but I didn't bring all the pictures. Not all of them were on the utilities, but some of them were. But he did remove the 26 trees. And he acknowledges that he did do this. He didn't have a permit. So now that's why we're here.
Why wouldn't the utility company come out and just take care of these trees that were interfering with the wires?
Why didn't they call the utility company?
I did. I did.
So that's him. That's the homeowner talking on the Zoom. So he did contact several utility companies, and they never responded. He actually contacted Town DPW, and Town DPW also didn't respond. But because it was his trees and they were on utilities,
Right.
he just hired someone to take care of the situation, and 26 came down.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, well, I don't venture to guess why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only concern I have is that, the wires are still there. Are these mitigated trees that are going back in? And maybe there should be some thought to dwarf species or something so that we're not back in the same problem. I
Yeah.
won't be sitting here 20 years from now on the commission, but somebody will be. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
If
Not
you
a
put the
bad,
trees in, will they affect the water?
not a bad question.
So yeah, that's something I can bring back to the client. This is not something, 52 trees don't get planted in 1 week.
Sure.
Based on availability on the nurseries and the species, I can go back to the homeowner and inform him that if we can look for some natives that are either slow growers or kind of stay short. One of the species we were looking at was the American holly. It does grow tall, but it will take probably 60 years or 80 years to get to the height of the utility lines. The cedar is another tree that is a slow grower, and that's what we're proposing. Or I'll probably just tell them not to water it too much, and it will take a little longer to grow. But yeah, we can look into some varieties that are either on the shorter side for those that are along the south street line, which is underneath the utility lines.
Okay, any questions from commissioners? Marjorie, any questions?
Marjorie, do you have any questions?
No, I think I went through this whole thing today. Unless there are any big changes, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. And if this is approved tonight, when would you begin the planting process?
So he already has a contractor involved, but like I mentioned earlier, he does have other plans on the project with respect to the house, and there will be some architectural drawings put together. That will be a separate filing once those plans are further along. So if some of the planting gets done, for instance, this fall or this coming spring, it will be the ones that are further away from the house. So it will be phased because they won't be able to plant 50-something trees at once. But whatever gets done late this year or early next year will be the ones probably furthest to the east. And the ones that are closer to the house will probably be the ones that would probably be towards the end of the 3-year order of condition lifetime.
Okay. All right. No further questions. I'll go out to the public first. Anyone that's here tonight that would like to comment or question this proposal? Don't see anybody. Anybody online? Does the owner want to say anything?
Mr. Teagle, did you have any commentary? You're not required to comment, but if you have anything to say. I'm sorry, Farley.
No, sir. Ryle from the Cape and Islands, I think, has represented me well. I have all the best intentions to revegetate with indigenous species and, make good.
Great, thank you. Drew, your comments and we'll...
So the only condition that I recommend the commission include in their motion is if this is a close-in issue, which I do recommend, with a condition of submittal of a 3-year signed contract with a qualified professional for monitoring and maintenance of all plantings as per Regulation 12. This may need to be kind of phased out just based on the timing of all the plantings because it's a lot of trees, but we can work with that to make sure that all of them ultimately are monitored and maintained to survive.
Okay. Great. So
I would just like to add that I, in good faith, have installed a well at the cost of $6,000 and do intend to install irrigations to preserve the tree plantings and at my expense, but I would like that duly noted.
Thank you.
Great. So it's an irrigation well. Do we have the location of that well on the plan? No?
We didn't locate it when we did the survey. The well was not in, but he did confirm that it is in. There'll be a new plan when the next project comes along. I'll put a note here to locate it.
Great. I'd like to see where that, just so we know where it is.
My only further comment to the commission is I do have trepidations about the 2 trees remaining on the border of Great Oak Road that I believe are diseased and are hanging over the road and have been improperly clipped by utility companies. And I do believe they pose a hazard, and I have reported that to multiple jurisdictions, including utility companies as well as the town.
Okay.
Yeah, there's still 2 trees that are hanging on utility lines that were not cut, but they're still there, and they still pose a hazard.
So if we could find 4 more trees in the nursery, maybe we could deal with those as well. I don't know.
Are those on his property or off property? Road layout?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that's,
Yeah, they could be like right on the property
Right.
line or something.
yeah.
Well, we can have one of the agents take a look at that.
Yep.
Follow through with that.
One of them is shown on the plan. It's actually on the layout. It's that big 16-inch that you see on the triangle piece. So it's not on his property, but it's like underneath the. So what the utility companies have been doing, they've been just kind of topping them, but the lower branches keep growing into the utility lines.
And is that one in the lines, that 16-inch?
Yeah, that one is underneath them. Well, actually, it's 16-inch, so it's a tall tree.
So it's up into the
Yeah.
wires? But that's not on his property, so. Okay. All right, I would entertain a motion if there is one.
I'll make a motion for 8 New Houghton Road, Edward J. Farley. And the motion would be to close an issue with condition of submittal of a signed 3-year contract with a qualified professional for monitoring and maintenance of all plantings as per Regulation 12.
Thank you, Sandy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Aaron. Any further discussion by the commissioners before I call for a vote? Guess not. We're all set? All right, let me call for that vote. Aaron?
Yes.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes as well. Motion carries. Good luck at the nursery. It's a lot of trees. Moving along, I will call the 606 hearing for 16 Summer Sea Road, Nancy E. Gendron. This is a proposed floating pier modification. Representative Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a request for determination of applicability. And we have a request to continue this hearing to October 19th at 6:06.
This was a,
That's the.
Dan, I think you had talked to.
Yeah, they had to revise the plan to move a pylon, was it?
So yeah, just a little brief. This section has many piers from all the neighbors, and it's on the south cove of Aquay Bay. And even by reducing the footprint of the floats and keeping just the two straight-on floats, it is still too congested. So they're revisiting the idea of adding an angle off of the ramp so that we provide more separation to the abutting flow. So that's why we're asking for a continuance. The homeowner wants to provide more separation between her relocated flow with the neighbor's flow.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the other floats on the plan.
There's a lot of floats.
A lot of, it's
The
a really
flotilla.
congested area.
Yeah, let's put a few there.
Yeah.
Okay. I would entertain a motion then to continue this hearing to October 19th at 6:06.
Yeah, so move for 16 Summer Sea Road.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Aaron. Any further discussion? We're good? I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well, so we'll continue that to the 19th. 6:06. Now calling the 6:09 hearing for 80 Whippoorwill, Patricia A. Willis, proposed septic system upgrade. Representative is Engineering Works. This is a RDA. Good
Hi.
evening, sir.
Good evening. Peter McEntee with Engineering Works, representing Patricia Willis. Her system failed for a real estate transaction due to its location with respect to high groundwater. And so we're proposing a new leach field for a 4-bedroom system that's going to require a pump chamber. And we're putting a sledgehammer S86 in there for a pre-treatment. And it's approximately located about 175 feet from the edge of the wetlands at the salt marsh, and but is inland, subject to coastal storm flowage. FEMA Zone AE Elevation 12.
That's it. Thank you. Questions from the commissioners?
Looks pretty straightforward.
I'm good.
And then let's get the sledgehammer for the IA system, so.
I sat in on that presentation about that technology with the sledgehammer. It's pretty impressive
Yeah,
stuff.
they've done a lot of research in other, across the country,
Yeah.
so.
And phosphorus, too.
Let's see how I know, that's a real
Yeah,
positive
that's
thing.
definitely.
Yeah. So let's see how the numbers come out when we start getting,
Peter, do you have an idea as to how many of these systems are out in the field operating at this stage? How many does DEP need? 50 in place before?
I don't think they've been around for probably about 15 years or so. I had proposed some
I think this is your
10,
third.
15 years ago, and I always wanted, see what happens is I design them, and then I don't necessarily get involved in the operation and maintenance, which I'd like to see more to see how they perform. But on a particular job that I did design, I had to go back, and the owners wanted to do a raise and replace. And it was up for plastic units, plastic units in the ground, which seem to seal up and don't get much oxygen movement. So I came to find out that it had been performing extremely well, and the system was in great shape. So that sort of made me go back and, investigate it and see how it's doing. And since then, I've met, some of the crew up there at Sledgehammer.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I just wanted to understand, because I love these drawings, I just want to understand how this stuff works. So this part right here, is that like an ejector pump that you would have?
That's just a 0.4 horse pump that,
Puts it up and out into the
yeah, up
field?
into the leaching field,
But
yeah.
So is it like an ejector pump you would see in your basement?
No, it's not an
You have-
ejector pump, it pumps the effluent. So, yeah, what happens is it pumps up and then flows back. Whatever's in the line flows back through weep holes into the pump chamber so that it doesn't freeze.
But it has the floats on it and stuff. I'm just trying to picture.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
floats, that's
so
all. Yeah. Okay.
usually one float and then an
Backup.
alarm float, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And Peter, do you know what the maintenance interval is for the medium that's in that cylinder?
The maintenance interval is twice a year.
So every 6 months?
Yeah, so, and I think the nice thing about it is the singulators and the microfast seem to take a bit longer to get started if you have seasonal use. People come back in the spring, and then it takes a while to get them performing well, where this is, supposedly is up and operating within a shorter period of time, a couple of weeks or so.
Yeah.
And even if the bio bag has to be replaced every year, so even if they are doing seasonal and they leave at the end of the summer, they have a new bio bag put in the spring when they come back. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Promising. That's good. Good news. Okay. Any questions from members of the audience? None? Nobody else is online to ask any questions?
Anybody online have any questions about this application?
Any
I'm good.
comment?
Just a couple of comments. So this is resource areas isolated as land subject to coastal storm flow, landlocked, and no other wetland resources within 100 feet. Calculations were provided by Pete McEntee, come out to 11.87 parts per million of nitrogen nitrate loading, which falls under the minimum standard of 19 parts per million under Reg 30. So it meets that standard. Sledgehammer IA system proposed. Board of Health comments require full compliance with IA system requirements. Septic system designed to be reviewed upon submission. No increase in living space proposed, so recommend negative determination.
Okay, thank you. All right, unless there's any other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for 80 Whippoorwill, Patricia A. Willis for negative determination.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion amongst commissioners before I call for a vote? None? Okay. Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes as well. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let me just get this next one open. Six, 12. Now calling the 6:12 hearing for 339 Monomoskoye Road, William P. and Roxanne M. Simmons, proposed raise and replace existing single-family dwelling and garage. Representative is BSS Design. This hearing is continued from 8/24. The notice of intent, file number 433248. Good evening, gentlemen. If I can have your names for the record.
Good evening, and thank you. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker at BSS Design, and with me is Andrew Garrelay at the Yarmouthport Design Group. Can introduce this project. As you can see up on the screen, it's an existing house. Basically, the proposal is it's a tear down, raise and replace of the house. Resource areas, it's right on Little River, so we have land under the ocean. There's a marsh fronting along the shoreline and a vinyl sheet piling bulkhead just landward of that marsh. And so the last change I did, which I think prompted part of the continuance, was got a in the email from DEP. I interpret it as meaning that the coastal bank is the landform that's behind the sheet piling, not the face of the sheet piling. So that's why I revised the plan at the last minute to move the 50 and 100-foot setbacks from the coastal bank 1 foot further landward. And that was the entire change of that. And the effect was actually the extra 1 foot added more mitigation planting because the house covered more in the 50 to 100 foot zone. Anyway, we have that. There's a coastal bank in that location, and then land subject to tidal action takes up about a third or so of the lot. Was in flood zone AE elevation 11 on there. So there's an existing house, which the floor is at only 9.3, and it has a little bit of a basement, so it's non-conformant to FEMA and building code standards, and it's a little older, and so the Simmons, of course, want to rebuild it. And they're going to build a larger house with the same number of bedrooms, but include the garage in that rebuilding also. And so you see on the bottom half of the page there is the proposed. It does take up more space. It goes from 7.9% of lot coverage to 10.6%. It is 1,500 square feet larger. The septic system, because it's within 300 feet of the wetland, your requirement for the IA systems, we've proposed the fast septic system in this location that will service the house. The soil absorption system is the existing one that was put in there as an upgrade 5 or so years ago. It will be pumped, similar to Pete's plan. We've got a, so putting in an advanced treatment system and then a pump chamber to pump it up to the septic system, which is at a higher elevation. And the nitrogen loading calculations were in there as part of the package, and that's, well under the 19 parts per million. It's down at like, with the treatment, it came out to about 6 parts per million with that. And so there is mitigation planting to be done. Andrew can fill in anything that I left out on that.
There we go.
That's not it, is it?
Yes, Andrew Garrelay, Yarmouth Port Design Group, registered landscape architect. Yeah, the house, as we're looking at on the, gotta make sure where north is, sorry. With toward the, obviously right along the top of the coastal bank / revetment or seawall, whatever we want to call it. There is a little bit of existing mitigation in there. Some of it wasn't in great shape, so I also infilled that. It's not part of the mitigation calculations, but it will be more solidly restored. And we have in there the smallest plant being sweet fern, and we have northern bayberry, fragrant sumac, creeping juniper, pasture rose, and beach plum, and also along the east or southeast, northeast property line, there's a number of Norway spruce trees that are quite large and rather ominous looking if there was a hurricane. And we're proposing to remove those. Those are the 3 red X's that you can see along there. And to mitigate for those, we have 9 7 to 8 foot eastern red cedars to make a buffer along that edge, and also a little bit of a native wildlife corridor for cover along the property line. Also provide screening for the homeowners. Plantings around the house are, typical Cape Cod ornamental plantings. Also 2 on the west side, the west property line is, or I gotta hold my plan properly. So, yeah, on the southwest property line, there's a proposed hedge of non-native emerald green arborvitaes for screening. It's a very narrow space there. And we're preserving the existing trees. There's a red maple by the further up the page as we're looking at it in that mitigation area. It's an existing one. You can see the circle, existing swamp or red maple, Acer rubrum. That will remain, of course. And there is a maple, a double maple. I believe that one, I can't recall now if it's been so long since I drew the plan, I'm sorry. That might be a Norway maple, but it might be a red maple. I can't recall. Anyway, it's staying. It's a large biomass there, and we don't propose to remove that. And let's see. Also, I put on the plan itself, I included the Mashpee Conservation Department lawn standards. Is right on the face of the plan for the landscape contractors to follow. And if there's any questions, I can add to that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to let other commissioners question first. I have several, but I'll follow up later.
Yeah, I did a site visit with Erin and Drew the other day out there, and I see the planting plans addresses some of the concerns that I had. But I think Drew's comments had a lot of the concerns I have too, so I think I'll just, let that go to, let
Okay.
Drew talk about all his concerns, and I agree with
We'll get to that.
what was said, yeah.
Okay. Aaron?
I'll echo what Steve said, but I did want to ask, the row of arborvitae, you said it's not native arborvitae. Is there something else that could be not arborvitae, that's possible for the privacy screening? Along that edge, the lower edge?
The difficulty there is it's very narrow. Currently, there is existing arborvitae that have, in older ones, different variety, that are not in good shape along there. It's mostly because they're narrow, so we don't want to, the eastern red cedar would be very, very wide in that space, and we need to make sure that we have some access to the backyard. We're not going to have access, if there's ever a need for a vehicle to get back there to work, if anything should happen to the, sheet piling, bulkhead, yes, bulkhead, sorry, couldn't think of the word. We want to make sure that we have some access getting back there, and that's why we're trying to keep it narrow.
Okay. Sandy?
I had a question about the cherry tree, that big cherry tree that's at the edge of the garage, the current garage.
Yeah, I think it's a Kwanzaa cherry tree.
Yeah. Why does that have to come down?
The proximity of
To the house?
of the
The new house?
construction, yeah. And it's not a native tree either, but, not that we want to take out any of them, but for construction reasons.
Okay. Marjorie, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. I'm listening intently, and I appreciate everything that I've received already. It's good.
My first question is on the Nitro Calcs exhibit sheet. That's the multicolored one. I don't know if we have that electronically. I've got it on my laptop. But
Good part of the packet.
I think it was sent out. It was sent out after the packet. Anyways, my question is this. I'm looking at all the areas in gray, and it's stated as a gravel driveway. But yet, on the proposed, not the existing, but the proposed plan, it's shown as pavers in front of that garage. So is the calculation based on the existing driveway that's there, or is it based on runoff from those pavers into that dry well? There's a discrepancy there on that drawing, and I'm kind of a quandary with that.
Yeah, I did all the calculations based on the two different calculations were based on with or without the denitrifying septic system, not based on the, I don't think it was based on the, not based on the older house. It's based on the proposed conditions, with the only change in the calculations being either with advanced treatment or not, or without advanced treatment.
Right. Well, I was going to go there next, too. There's two septic tanks on the plan. There's one for the existing bedroom, which is in the garage, I believe, in front of this project. And that tank, that 1,500-gallon tank, is not part of this proposal?
The one shown on the existing conditions plan?
It should be on both.
Well, we're removing the existing tank. because
For the
that's-
old house, for the
that's-
raise and replace. But
Right.
what about the 1,500-gallon tank that's servicing the one-bedroom that's in the existing garage in the front?
Oh, up there, yeah.
That's the one I'm referring to. That's staying, correct?
That is staying,
And that's
yes.
not an IA system.
That's not.
And that tank is feeding into that D-box, and then it's going around the capacity, the five-bedroom capacity field, over to the existing pump chamber, correct? And then back?
No, actually, the way we did
does that
that's
work?
just going directly in because
That
that,
goes directly into the leach field.
Because the bedroom
And then the
is
other
not-
4 would be coming in. So when you did the nitrogen calculations, did you figure that tank in as well? Because we need a figure for the entire lot.
I have it, well, with no advanced treatment, it's under 9 parts per million. But that one, and I could split it out, that one bedroom,
Right.
or I could reroute it so that it does. I didn't want to have to go downhill to that, then back up.
Okay.
I could pipe it to change so that it is treated, but it's a little more work for them.
Well, I was unable to, I looked at the figures quick, and then I looked at that tank, and I figured that's not part of the project, but it's a functioning tank. It's going to create a certain amount of nitrogen coming off of the site, and I didn't know if that was part of what you have for a total figure. So I don't know if that's going to change your 11.87 parts per million. I think it's going to. I think that would have to come up. Wouldn't it? I mean, it's not an IA tank, so. But anyways, that's another issue. Let me go on to a couple of others that I have. On the plan, the existing infrastructure is 4,274 square feet,
Yes,
and the proposed structure is 5,739.
yes.
So we have an increase of 1,465 square feet. And Regulation 12 calls for a minimum ratio of 2 to 1. So I come up with 2,930 square feet of mitigation, and you're proposing 629. So I'm at a loss as to the minimal amount of mitigation that's being, unless you're asking for a waiver under 172.7A3. I don't know. I didn't see the information about that. There's no waiver here, right?
No waiver that we saw.
No,
So I guess the short of it is, this is a pretty big project with very little mitigation, given the fact that we're taking down some, what I would say, majestic trees that are on Monomoskoye Island. I know I drive into that island and it says, "Welcome to the Wildlife Preserve." And I was there today for over an hour, and I was watching at least a dozen different species of birds because the migration is starting. And those trees are heavily used, and they're all, every one of them has X's. So I stood back on the deck and looked at all these large trees that are going away, and I'm watching these migratory birds go through, and I'm thinking, there's a tremendous effect to wildlife for this proposal. So, yeah, I have a lot of concerns about what's before this commission right now.
a lot of the increase in coverage is beyond the 100-foot setback, so it's not included in the mitigation calculations. And then
Well-
the increase in the 50 to 100 is a 1-to-1.
618 square feet.
We're under mitigation regulation 12, it's a minimum of 2 to 1 if you're not asking for a waiver, right here in the preface, 2 to 1 mitigation ratio,
On
0 to 100.
on every
Within the
project?
within the entire buffer zone. I'll read it for you.
Oh,
Wetland resource area replication buffer zone mitigation compensation will not be considered unless the project proponent has demonstrated to the commission's satisfaction that there are no reasonable alternatives, that the project as proposed minimizes the amount of replication mitigation compensation necessary, that the mitigation proposed is at a minimum of 2 to 1 ratio, that the mitigation proposed enhances existing wetland resources and public wetland interests, and that adequate construction and monitoring protocols are provided. So that's in the preface of Regulation 12.
I'm just confused, because is that new? Or-
Yeah, yeah, it got revised.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
why I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was
Yeah.
going to say, I thought I used the proper,
Yeah, it's a revision.
okay.
The last revision was April 28th, 2022.
Yeah, so it's been on the books for well over a year.
So the mitigation calculations, the ones in the 10 feet and then 5-foot increments, that's no longer.
That's for a waiver request. The chart is for a waiver request. Are you requesting a waiver as far as this? You're not pushing anything closer to the resource area, correct?
Right.
But you're still triggering mitigation because of development of previously altered areas, right?
Yeah.
It's a 2-to-1 ratio in the absence of a waiver. So you have to revise the mitigation calculations to reflect a 2-to-1. It's not 1-to-1, it's 2-to-1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I understand there needs to be some clarification here in general for the mitigation regulations, but that's what it currently states.
Okay, yeah, I just had no idea of that.
Nope, understood.
Sorry about that.
Guess it's never come up with us before.
Yeah. I don't understand why it hasn't, if it's been on the books for over a year.
That's easy to handle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're,
And what would allow us to request a waiver?
Waiver is really if you're within that first 50 feet, if you're encroaching towards closer to the resource area, that's where you request a waiver. It's that first 50 feet, but you're not, correct?
Okay.
Because then that ratio gets substantially higher based on that chart.
Right.
Right.
I say this with the full understanding that there needs to be more work on mitigation regulation 12 because it's hardly straightforward in its current iteration, and we will work towards that. But the way it's currently worded is
No, I
exactly
understand.
the way
I
we
understand.
described.
Yeah. I just didn't realize it. so.
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of concerns here that need to be addressed. Would you like to request a continuance to rework what you have, or
What,
do you want us to proceed with what we have and continue along, or?
well, I guess the one issue that I know for the standards is the mitigation number, obviously. But and I guess there's a concern about your nitrogen
You want
calculation.
some calculations redone, or what are the numerous concerns?
Okay. My concern on the nitrogen calculations is that the exhibit doesn't match the proposal. The driveway is all gravel in the exhibit. The proposal is to have the driveway with paver blocks, correct?
It's calculated as pavement.
It's calculated as
It's
pavement.
all calculated as paved area, yes.
And do we allow pavement in a floodplain?
It's not prohibited.
No,
Well,
I
is
guess-
that paver blocks? I mean, I'm going by the calculation chart as either paved area, roof, pave, whatever,
Right.
as impervious, or as, to make it stricter, I called it paved area, because for these calculations, that's a stricter criteria. Otherwise, I call it natural area, or what? I'm by this calculation, I'm not saying that it is paved, just I use that
You use that as
category
a-
for the purpose of these calculations.
Yeah. Right.
Because that's a tougher criteria. And I didn't want to call it a natural area.
Right.
It's not lawn.
Right.
You know, to sort of fit into the categories on these calculations, I had to call it something, and I called it what is the stricter criteria.
I can't speak for the entire commission, but I can speak for myself. we faced a situation in a previous job several months ago, and I brought up the fact that when you read the Mashpee Wetlands Bylaw 172-2, land subject to coastal flow is a resource area. It's not a buffer zone, it's a resource area. It's just as much of a resource area as a pond, a stream, a creek, a beach, a dune, an estuary. They're all listed. And it specifically says any of the aforesaid resource areas. So I see an increase of 1,465 square feet taken up in a resource area, and I don't really see adequate mitigation for it. That's where I'm coming from. Quite frankly, it's way too big of a house for me to feel comfortable with, for what you're proposing. If you had everything, all the Ts crossed and all the Is dotted, I'd be voting no, because I just don't see it.
Well, and obviously, we represent the people who want to do this,
Sure.
rather than, we're not the actual people that are deciding to build the house bigger. But what you're saying about the wetland, or the flood zone being a resource area, this is a new application do we have now a buffer to a flood zone?
That's debatable, because it also says in 172.2, and I'll read it for you.
It's never been applied that way, as far as I know, in the past. The
Let
flood zone
me
has.
just read this to you. Except as permitted by the Conservation Commission or as provided in this bylaw, no person shall commence to remove, fill, dredge, build upon, degrade, discharge into, or otherwise alter the following resource areas. And then it lists them all, of which land subject to flooding or inundation by groundwater or surface water, land subject to tidal action, coastal storm flowage or flooding, lands within, on 100 feet of any of the aforesaid resource areas, rivers and lands within 200 feet. So it lumps them all together and affords every one of them a 100-foot buffer. I know, and we had this long discussion with another job. The DEP regulations, the state, has no buffer. But our wetlands bylaw does. I'm looking right at it. And, I'm not talking about a buffer. What I'm talking about is you're inside a resource area. So forget buffer. You're in it. You're in that resource area. You're taking up 1,465 square feet, additional square feet of construction. Let me finish. And when I look at a 2-to-1 ratio as a minimum, I come up with 2930 square feet of mitigation. And that's just for what you're taking up for the space of the building. That doesn't count any of the trees that you're taking out. So there's a lot here that I just don't feel comfortable with.
But wouldn't we not be able, if it's a resource area, we wouldn't be able to put a house in it? Any other resource area, we can't build in it.
You have a legally permitted dwelling that's there, you can replace that, but to make it bigger,
But
That's another
it's
question.
no different than trying to put a house in a BVW, is what you're saying.
exactly.
I have no idea.
May I make some
Sure.
comments?
Absolutely.
So I think you're discounting, Paul, Regulation 25, which does apply to this project. This is Section 2, Performance Standards, Section C, 2, A through D. And there's a notation. After Section D, provisions of B, C, and D above will not apply to any lots or portions thereof and/or existing or legally permitted development, construction, and/or alterations that are not the subject of the filing under Chapter 172. In other words, these provisions are not retroactive for existing projects that were done legally, and the 100-foot buffer zone is cited under 172-2, landward of land subject to coastal storm flow. So Reg 25 currently states there is no buffer zone to the flood zone, despite what the bylaw says.
Right.
My comments here, I mean, you keep coming back to land subject to coastal storm flow as a resource area, and I 100% agree. It has standards, though. It has allowable standards, it has thresholds. And you don't seem to be making mention of those allowances. So there's also here, what you're looking at, I understand it's a large house, and I think there should probably be effort to reduce it a little bit because it is a pretty substantial expansion. You also have, when you're looking at projects like this, you have to take into consideration the existing condition. You have a high-maintenance lawn with no buffer strip whatsoever separating this existing home from the resource area. If they were to be acquiesced to additional mitigation, you would get a substantial buffer zone in place of high-maintenance turf. I would also recommend replacing all areas of turf within jurisdiction on this high-maintenance lawn to bring them into compliance with current lawn standards. So if you look at it from that perspective, this is a net environmental benefit by allowing a house this size, maybe some adjustment to the footprint here and there, but I don't think the benefit of gaining a buffer zone should be completely omitted from the review process of this project. And I think, in my opinion, that should be the overriding focus here, is that you're getting something in return. That's the whole kind of exchange here between an applicant and the commission, is to look at not only just focusing on one resource area and a particular standard of that resource area, but looking at what you're getting in return. So I'm just putting that out there for your consideration, particularly in this instance where there is no buffer, and there could provide a pretty substantial buffer here and convert very high-maintenance lawn, whereas if this project was to be denied, you wouldn't get any of that, and you would have ongoing contribution to water quality as a result. So just putting that out there is something to consider.
Yep.
So Drew, can I ask then, do you come to some conclusion in terms of the resolution for the application tonight? Or are you saying?
I think that if the applicant is willing to come up with a revised plan with 2-to-1 mitigation ratio, citing that as close to the resource area as possible, my other suggestion would be conversion of high-maintenance turf to our current standards. Come back, let the commission review that through a continuance. That would be my recommendation.
Like it couldn't be achieved really without those adjustments.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that at all.
Mr. Chairman, what do you think?
Well, that's certainly as a minimum. I don't see how we can proceed with what's before us tonight.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have that additional dialogue to just look at some of the other aspects of this project.
Yeah.
I think that was important. I think it was really important to make note of that, Drew.
Well, I know to Sandy's point with the cluster cherry tree, if the house were reduced, maybe that's savable.
Can I just say also, if there's a way to save those 3 spruce trees, I know you said they're ominous looking, but they're beautiful trees and they're enormous. And just looking at the habitat and the ground cover, you can cut stuff like that down, you're raising the temperature of the ground.
Yeah,
Right off the bat.
my initial site meeting, and let me know if I'm not saying this right, my initial site meeting with Drew several months back, the trees were, I didn't think they were touchable, but it was suggested to me that they were very much a hazard. They're very high in a very open space, and a hurricane comes, those are going to crush one of the houses, or both of them.
I mean, spruce trees, I'm not debating any sort of habitat qualities that they provide. They're not native species. They're not adapted to this climate, and therefore, based on that criterion alone, they are subject to storm damage to a higher degree than a native species. And when you look at their height and their setback from the current house, even if none of this was being proposed at all, it's a concern. These are very large, non-native species. Spruce trees I've seen in multiple locations get subject to disease and impacts from the local environment, basically. They're not a coastal species.
So you don't see that replacing them with something that's only going to grow to 8 feet as a replacement? I just feel like that's
the-
not.
Well, on that side, it's
They're
cedars.
proposed, yeah. They're
That's-
proposed at 8
yeah.
feet,
Right.
the
Right.
cedars.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they're gonna grow
I
big.
think that, again, it's a tricky kind of debate, but I think you have to take safety into consideration here with trees that size. And from my experience, and you can talk to just about any arborist, spruces aren't going to survive here. It's a kind of amazing they got to that
I know, I was
height.
gonna say they have.
Yeah.
They have survived.
Yeah.
And they're enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind
But
of.
they are, because they're non-native, they're subject to disease, they're subject to infestation from insects, and a lot of trees are. I typically, when I see, non-native species, I don't rest comfortable with that, particularly of that size. It's not to say that they, should or should not be taken out, I'm just giving you my observations based on my
Was
history
this
with
where we
this.
saw the arborvitae that was like a
Yeah,
shrub, like
yeah.
not even narrow anymore? It had grown to
Right.
like a very wide footprint. So is that all arborvitae or is that a specific type? Because was this the one where we
This
saw
is
that?
if you're facing the house, facing out towards the water. on the
Facing,
le- on the
oh,
left.
the left side, yeah, that's emerald green arborvitae is a
Yeah.
very narrow growing, dense, narrow growing.
Right, this one was not narrow at all. It was, right? You said it was
existing
more-
Yeah, it was,
Oh,
I couldn't
existing,
tell if it was
existing.
a
Yeah, yeah.
arborvitae or a cedar. I wasn't sure which one. It looked like an arborvitae, but it had.
Yeah, there are
like an
arborvitaes, and I'm going on a lot of memory here, because I worked on this a long time ago, back in the winter. Along that side, and they're very, very thinned out, if I'm recalling correctly. And just to regain the privacy, because they're all defoliated underneath, that's why I proposed the emerald green arborvitae, because it's evergreen and it's very narrow.
The thing too, another comment I want to make is I know, and again, I'm not discounting this at all. You see an observation of what looks to be prolific wildlife habitat or suitable wildlife habitat, and you have some concerns about that, you can make it a condition to do a wildlife habitat study, to see truly what these species provide in terms of habitat or food source or both. So there are mechanisms available to you to make that assessment above and beyond what you see. So it's a true assessment of the habitat value, and it may turn out to be just that, high wildlife habitat value. But going by what you see during a 10 to 20-minute site visit isn't necessarily reflective of what's happening there. And I'm not denying it or saying it's true or false. I'm just saying the best way to vet that out is to require a habitat study and see what you're looking at. So it's an option that's available to you as a condition if you want to approve this project or just want to get more information. You could also require planting of trees as mitigation out towards the water as well in this buffer zone. So you're not just limited to shrubs or what you see on Andrew's plan, that's your discretion. Always good to have vegetative stratum, all layers of vegetation in a mitigation scenario, not just shrubs or ground cover, but a mix of all three. So, I think there's opportunity for just some more vetting out and looking at it. I just don't want to see it shut down without those opportunities vetted out. That's all.
Well, we're certainly, and very obviously need to do the 2-to-1 mitigation, there's no
Right.
question about that.
Yeah.
I would point out again that I did put the lawn standards onto the face of the plan, that the lawn needs to be
Yeah,
updated into that.
that's good.
So
It
it's
looks like
already
a
on
pretty
there.
high-maintenance turf.
Right, oh, absolutely is, and very close to the water.
Yeah.
So that is why that's on the face of the plan, to adhere to those standards. And as far as if we need to do more with the, if the concern is, there seems to be quite a concern about the arborvitae hedge not being native, I could certainly make a change to that and do something that's not evergreen, but native. I'm thinking what makes a nice privacy hedge is winterberry makes a decent.
just about to say winterberry
It
is
makes, and it's
good food
very,
source.
very good food source.
Excellent food source, yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention it's stunning in the
Yeah.
wintertime.
I have one question, Tom, on the new pump chamber and the tank going in. Are there any separation of groundwater issues with those tanks at all?
The,
And the pump?
you have to.
I didn't see any septic design on the plan.
I had that in my notes and I forgot to ask. Groundwater elevation.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't quite say there. I mean, we're at elevation
It shows 8 by the
6, 7,
pump,
8.
right?
I think that there's probably a good chance that the base of the, well, the pump chamber is there already. So all we're doing is putting in a new septic tank. The tank with the tank with the treatment
Right.
is the new one. The pump chamber is there already because it's serving the existing house.
Okay, so it'll be the new fast-ready tank
The
then?
fast-ready tank, because it's serving the new house, well, that's coming out, we've got here coming out, and I'm not sure that's right, coming out at an elevation of 6 1/4. So in the groundwater, it's probably right about that tank is probably right about at the groundwater elevation, the bottom of the tank.
Right, so you're going to ask for waiver from Board of Health for that too, or? is that-
Is there one for that, or it's from the leaching?
For leaching, okay, I didn't know if there was a waiver, so, okay.
Well, when you have a.
But, so
I
you
mean,
said
when
the
you have a-
tank is right at groundwater then, right? Yeah.
The tank, but it's a
Yeah.
watertight tank.
Water tank, okay. And then it mentions a blower on a concrete slab.
Right.
So is that blower watertight also?
That is, well, actually frankly, that should have been noted to be put in above the flood
Okay.
elevation.
Yeah, on that shed.
Yeah. I'll note that on the plan.
What is the finished grade elevation above that tank? 'Cause you'd have to be above, what, 12? Is it 12 there?
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
that blower?
flood elevations.
That blower would have to be over 12, right?
Yeah, flood elevation says 12, 812.
No good.
So the base of the tank would be,
No, it says elevation 11. No, it's elevation 11 is that flood elevation where the house is.
Elevation 1.
Yeah, it's 11
Oh,
down by
yeah,
the
yeah.
bulkhead, and it goes from
Yeah.
11. Yeah.
but on the profile of the tank that you were asking, given the 6-inch crushed stone bedding, you're down, if this is drawn to scale, it looks like the base of that tank is about well over 6 feet below finished grade. So it would be nice to know where that groundwater is before we say, yeah, this is great. You could be a foot into it, for all we know. We don't have the figure.
Has this been submitted to Board of Health yet, or Health Department for septic?
We
actually, I got
did
there.
file it there through Permitize.
Yeah, okay.
I believe we did.
Yeah, it says full compliance with Board of Health IAA system, floor plans to be reviewed upon submission. I mean, I know the
They
Board of
must
Health
have-
is.
They must have the
They,
groundwater
yeah, they have the groundwater.
in that other system, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I know they'll certainly address that situation when it comes time for their review.
Could note that on the plan if you're going to do any revising on this plan, just so we have it as well.
Yeah.
Did you catch
What
that?
what was that on the plan?
The groundwater elevation, just so we know that tank's going to
Yeah,
be above
once
it.
it gets reviewed by Board of Health.
Because, am I wrong, Tom, with that? The top of that tank, if we go from the top of that section AA profile up to the finished grade, that looks to me to be well over a foot.
The top of the tank.
The inverse is 5.4.
5.
The tank itself is over 5.
That elevation, that's a mistake there. The top of the tank, there's one error on this profile, it says 13.5, but the top of the tank is not 13.5, it's about 6.5. So it's a foot, 1.7 feet down from the
1.7?
ground.
Yeah, the invert out is at 5.2. The
Yeah.
invert out of the tank, and everything below that is sealed. I mean, that's sealed too, but, I mean, that's the only place that would be some kind of an opening.
I'm just looking at the dimensions on section AA on the plan for the tank itself. It says 4 feet 7 inches from the base of that
the
crushed
invert.
stone up to the inlet. See that, 4 feet 7 inches?
That, from the pipe down is 4.7, yeah.
Right. And then you've got, it looks to be another foot to the top of the tank and at least another foot to the finished grade. So you're down pretty deep.
Well, the 4.7 brings the bottom of the tank about elevation 1.
Yeah.
And the high water is probably around 0.8 or something, so it's very near.
You're right there.
Very near the high water.
Well, if you
We
get
can
that from the
firm
Board
that
of
up with
Health,
some.
that would be good to have on the plan.
We can get some better elevations marked on
Yeah.
that.
Can we take the invert out of the house, the higher elevation?
Should have been.
Anything else? Let me go to the public, there's some people.
We've got elevations.
Is there anybody from the public that has questions or comments? This would be the time. I didn't know if they were here for it or not.
I think some of them here for the refuge presentation, which is a pre-post agenda item.
Okay.
So we're looking at a continuance.
Yeah, just would like to make sure that we're going to address everything
Yeah.
that we need to. So 2-to-1 ratio for mitigation, and that's based on what's happening to the 50, am I correct?
I think it's a whole house, 'cause
Like
it's
double of what I've calculated?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tom, you don't need to revise nitrogen, right? Because we already have it as, you already have it as impervious,
Well, as far
Oh,
as the
oh, the
driveway
tank.
thing, I put on
The
an
tank.
impervious, but I will
the tank, yeah.
check it as far as the one bedroom and the
Yeah.
other thing, and show that that one bedroom is not part of the treatment
Yeah.
system.
And Tom's going to give you the groundwater elevation in reference to the septic tank, and possibly lift the septic tank a little higher as well, maybe.
Yeah. Will.
And then your mitigation, try to include more strata, more trees.
More strata, trees, add trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this just a 2-week thing, or is it, I mean, talking to her, about getting her on board with doing more mitigations, that could be,
I don't think she has a choice, but
Right. I just didn't
you
know
want
how long I want.
to kick it. This has gone a long time,
No,
though.
she's not, won't be happy.
Let's kick it to 2.
What do we
I think
have
can
for a
do it in
schedule?
2, right?
You can do it, yes, it's just a matter of her saying it's-
October
it has to be
19th,
done.
6:09.
I guess we could continue it again if we need to, right?
Yeah.
609.
So we would like to request a continuance.
October 19th, is that a suitable date, or you need more time? That would be the next available.
Oh, that's the next
That's
available.
fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good?
October 19, yeah.
It's 6:09.
It's a whole month, that's plenty, yeah.
Okay, so we have a request for continuance. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to continue the hearing for 339 Monomoskoye Road to October 19th at 6:09 PM, and to address, do you want me to list all the items that? Okay, so via the 2-to-1 mitigation calculations, and that includes more tree strata, is that the correct word they used?
Yeah.
Nitrogen calculations, Septic tank details need to be clarified. And then any recommendations per the agent to reduce the footprint of the house? Is that?
If there's an
I'll have to look at-
opportunity to do so, it's not, you know, hard and fast recommendation. It's just if there's an opportunity. It's a lot of impervious surface. And I understand there's mitigation compensating for that, but the whole goal here with raise, replace, and mitigation is to strike a balance. And getting over 1,000 square feet an increase is not what I would consider a balance.
Yeah, we had missed the part about the 2 to 1.
And I understand you're representing your clients. I get it.
Yeah, I know.
I think, did I cover everything in that motion?
I think so.
I think
That
you did.
was discussed, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you did.
Okay.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Aaron.
What date is the current house?
Any further discussion by the commissioners?
Just the house
Oh, no,
itself.
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important what Drew just said, even though it may not be technically within the purview of the Conservation Commission, the general sense of reducing the footprint is an important one as we move forward with all of the issues that are going to come cascading in around this property owner and lots of others who are going to come before us. So I would be hopeful that they would take that under consideration in good faith.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else? I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So we'll continue to October 19th, 6:09.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to call the 6:15 hearing for 11 Taft Railway, Gregory R. and Hillary Lee, request for minor change to previously approved seawall on order of conditions 433133, Representative Cape and Islands Engineering. This is continued from 8/24. It's an administrative approval. Good evening again.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant for this project at 11 Taft Rail. So yeah, this project was continued to schedule a site visit and meeting with some commission members and staff for this project. As mentioned, this project received an order of condition approximately 2 years ago. And what the contractor recommended doing was raising the top of the proposed bulkhead by about 1.5 feet. So that was the whole purpose of this. So an admin application was filed, and we're just reviewing this with the board to see if the board approves the admin to be approved by staff. Essentially, the project in terms of footprint does not change. The footprint of the bulkhead does not change. The footprint of proposed mitigation or restoration plantings does not change. What is being done here is from a previously approved elevation of the top of the bulkhead of elevation 3.6, it is going now up to elevation 5.0. Behind the bulkhead, the planting is still going to be planted. The area behind the bulkhead still remains as a coastal bank. There is no loss in footprint of any of the resources. It is simply a matter of adjusting the elevation to take into consideration the sea level rise that inevitably is happening. Thank you.
Okay, I know, Aaron, you had a chance to go out with Drew, and Steve, you were on that site visit. Sandy and I were there today for a while, so we've all had a chance to look at it. I had one question about the cedar tree it didn't have the red tape on it, so I assume it's staying. And it's the one that's right at the corner of the deck Yeah,
Yeah, there was one cedar tree that was in really good shape. I think that one,
I think
we
it's this
said
one
remain.
here. You can't see the top of it. I think it's
Right.
that one. It's
if you
really
go,
Yeah,
ballooned out.
yeah.
if you go to the plan itself,
Oh, yeah. No.
it's got to be in Google. Google has everything.
This one?
Okay. And if we can enlarge that, Drew, so you can get that, see where it says located to and the line coming down? It's that cedar. Bring your cursor over to the left a little bit, right, down, now down, that one right there.
Yeah, okay.
That one's staying, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, when we come over to the double oak, the 8-inch oak, there's one that's leaning over quite a bit, one's flagged to go, but the rest of that oak is staying, correct?
I believe that's the intent. What's happening is
The roots
driving these piles, all you need is vertical clearance. You don't really need horizontal spacing.
Right.
So if branches or if there's a leaning tree that prevents the vertical driving of the sheet piles, then yes, the tree will have to be removed or whatever branch is reaching over.
I think we talked about that one being limbed up. I thought that oak, right?
Yeah.
Was it that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, because it said the one that was leaning over was coming out, but then we
When
talked
we
about
were out
limbing
there
up.
with Mark,
Yeah.
he said that one might
Yeah.
be able to be limbed up. Yeah.
one
There were at
that's
least
staying, yeah.
2 trees that looked like they were going to be lost that could now be saved with the raising of the grade. I think the cedar was one of them.
Right,
Is it
that's
cedar
cedar.
Right, there were 3 trees that Mark tagged, was the oak that was leaning over, the cedar that was probably 3/4 dead.
Yeah.
And there was another
Yeah.
one that was in pretty bad shape, just those 3 trees.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 But the one that wasn't tagged, I don't see how you can bring the fill in and not encroach up onto the base of that tree. 'Cause
Well,
it's
the
actually
fill,
lower.
the fill mark wasn't coming up that high. When
Right.
we looked at that.
So the fill is only to kind of cover up the area that's very steep
Yeah.
to the backside of the proposed sheathing. It's not filling all the way that's proposed to be planted. The planting that is shown there, which kind of goes around some of the existing trees, that's just additional plantings around the trees, is not all new fill material. The fill material, if you look at the cross section, it's only for that portion that is slumping down to the water.
There was a stake right next to that.
I saw
oak.
the stake
And
with
that-
the star
mark-
on it.
The star on it. It was down
Right.
low. It was only maybe about this high up.
And that's the height of the fill.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty low. 'Cause that's what we talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so. That's why we didn't have any.
And how does the fill, because they're not going to use a barge if you're coming up a little higher, that's what we were told.
Yeah, that's.
How do you get the fill in there? Because there's only one spot I could see, and you'd have to take it in one wheelbarrow at a time.
So there's probably going to be a little bobcat to travel back and forth from wherever the material is brought over to bring it back to behind the bulkhead. But yeah, no, I don't envision a dump truck backing all the way back here to this backyard and placing it. I can see just a bobcat just going back and forth with the fill around wherever possible, because the deck is already tight enough between some of the trees. So there's some areas that it will be a lot of handwork with wheelbarrows. But for the most part, whatever can be done with little bobcats, that's probably what they'll do.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of room. I mean, you come to the side of that garage, and then you've got utilities over there. To me, it looked like it was going to be a lot of handwork.
Yeah, but didn't Chris from Beacon Marine, didn't he say that all the way in on the inlet, that part of it's going to be done from shore?
Yeah.
I think, probably with a dingo or a small
Yeah.
bobcat coming there. And then the barge would pick it up like
Pick it up from.
2/3 of the way down on the way out.
Yeah.
I thought that's what he said to us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. The further into the cove you get, the more
Shallower.
land where it's going to be from the land
Right,
side.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And one other question, because I wasn't there for the meeting, but I did see it today. That 4-inch tree has at least a dozen northern bayberry bushes around it. Are those staying or going, or what's going on with those?
So native shrubbery that is not being impacted by the installation will stay.
So it's going to stay.
And the fill, there's going to be substantial fill right behind the bulkhead itself. But as you taper landward, the fill will diminish to nothing. So if they're like 4 feet behind the bulkhead, nothing's going to happen to those shrubs.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
I just had a question. How are they going to get those trees out of there without anything dropping into the water? They're just going to...
Yeah, so the tree removal will just typical tree removal. Somebody will limb it off, top it off,
Yeah.
and just by sections if they have to. If the one tree is reachable by the barge, maybe it is done through the barge. I don't know if that is a shallow part. But yeah, the tree removal will just be a typical tree removal, not dropping the tree into the water.
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll take it piece by piece.
yeah. This,
And what prevents all the sawdust from going into the water? Because I was there today, and there's a lot of fish feeding. I looked at it and I thought, how do you prevent? Because when we condition docks, you can't cut the lumber near the water.
Right.
You gotta get back from the water. So how
Right,
do
the
you
main-
stop that from all going in?
The main reason that condition, as I understood, for lumber, pressure-treated lumber
Pressure-treated lumber,
construction,
yes,
is the chemicals that are used in pressure treating. Once you saw cut a pressure-treated lumber, those chemicals are being
Sure.
airborne and whatever. But for trees or saw cutting a tree, I've never seen that regulation or that condition put forth. I actually don't know that you can.
I mean, it's
You can't put a bag underneath
It's
the
kinda like-
chainsaw.
It's mission impossible, but when
It's
we were
organic
there
material,
today,
though.
there was a lot of fish feeding. I'm just thinking they're going to be feeding on wood dust.
it's pretty organic material. I mean, I don't see that as a real concern.
No?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
probably-
for PT lumber, yeah, and we put that condition ourselves on our plans. Any saw cutting of timber to be done on the upland side to prevent anything from reaching the water, because there is chemicals with those products.
Yeah, I get that.
But on a natural growing tree, I don't agree that we need a condition such as collecting the sawdust from reaching the water.
When will the construction commence?
I'm not sure. I think the window they have is winter,
Okay.
as I understand.
So you won't
but-
have as many fish around?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, these are tiny, tiny, tiny.
Yeah,
ones,
yeah,
yeah.
I believe also the permit has 1 year left on its lifespan, so they just have this 1 year to build unless we extend it.
Right, it was 21, I think,
Yes.
the order.
Yes.
Excuse me, Drew,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
I have to attend to something that's happening here in the building, if it's possible. Do you have a quorum if I have to drop out?
Yep.
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, so with apologies, I may drop right back in, but I've got to go
Yeah.
take care of something on the other side of the building.
Understandable.
Good luck.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks.
No problem.
And then I'll have electricity for the rest of the week. That would be great. Okay. Thanks all.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions?
No?
We're good. Any questions from the public? Seem to be any. Any last comments, Joe?
No, nothing more to add.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for 11 Taffera Way, Gregory R. and Hillary Lee for approval of the administrative request.
Okay. Thank you.
Second?
Second, Aaron? Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Gregory's gone, right?
Yeah.
So I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me just clear this off. Now calling the 6:18 hearing for 42 Wheeler Road. Marcio de Jesus, proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling with associated landscaping and hardscaping. Representative is Colley Site Services LLC. This is continued from September 7th to notice of intent, DEP file number 433252.
Well, yeah, I'm William Colley. I'm representing Marcio de Jesus, the owner of 42 Wheeler Road. We filed a notice of intent. He currently owns a 3-bedroom home there. He'd like to raise and rebuild with another 3-bedroom home. We are not getting any closer to the resource area. The actual house proposed footprint is going to be moved more upland. It's not substantially larger. The septic system will remain. If the Board of Health requires any new components, we'll replace them further upland. Dry wells are not shown on the plan right now. We're waiting for the finished architectural plans. Once we receive those, we'll amend the site plan showing dry wells. Mitigation planning, we calced, located on the plan. The natural heritage endangered species program has been, we have filed with them, and we are expecting a reply by October 13th. We have also, it's been brought to our attention, the bocce court was never permitted, and understand that has to be resolved. And we are willing to work with Concom and their agents to resolve that. The existing grade's not going to change.
I don't know why Board of Health had no comment on this.
What's that?
I don't know why Board of Health had no comment on this.
Doesn't make any sense, yeah. So we're all set? All set with what you wanted to present?
Excuse me?
Are you all set with your presentation? Anything
Yes.
else you want to add? Okay. All right, I'll turn this over to commissioners that have questions first.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, I did have some concerns, I think, that, in the comments Drew echoed, as one is the bocce court within the buffer zones, and looks fairly recent. Looks like a lot of sand on the beach is very recent also, too.
Excuse me?
The sand on the beach looks very new.
No, it
Okay.
isn't. It's not man-made. It has not been replaced.
That's that.
Historically, it's been like that.
Okay. And then, question, all the dimensions from the buffer zones coming off the edge of the pond and that's one of my questions. I'm not 100% certain. Is the
No,
edge of the pond the proper delineation?
Yeah, so he has this shown, if I may, the beach area. So beach, under the Wetlands Protection Act, under the State Act.
Our
this
wetland
bylaw
scientist flagged.
Mirrors it. Beach is what's known under the Wetlands Protection Act as bordering land subject to flooding. So it's these areas that are subject to flooding for inland water bodies. Then you've got land subject to coastal storm flow out on the coast, but it's the equivalent of that for inland water bodies. And it typically coincides either with a sandy beach area or just a transition zone, which could also be, it could be bordering vegetative wetland, but if you see all sand, that's typically categorized as bordering land subject to flooding. Because there is no resource area called inland beach. It's bordering land subject to flooding is the technical name for it. So what you have labeled here as beach, that's the actual resource area name.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I don't know if there's been any real delineation as far as what the average flood level of this particular area of abutting beachfront is. So it may not be the upland extent of Sandy Beach, it could be somewhere between that and the water. Oh, no, there's been no delineation of it.
Okay.
So you gotta delineate bordering land subject to flooding, because it's applicable here. So that's one of the things you're gonna have to show as a delineation,
Okay.
okay? But that's, so I don't know, it's somewhere between the
Yeah, that's.
upland extent of sand and the water.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for clarification on that.
Yeah.
And then, I noticed when I was there that the elevation of the pond was fairly high. So, what is I'm not what the water level in the pond is and say, all right, it was pretty, the grade was very low there, so is the house proposed to have a foundation underneath it? So what's the groundwater level to the pond? and where
I
the house is
understand.
at? Yeah.
We have not received the finished plans yet. I don't know if it's going to be a slab on grade with a 2-foot wall underneath it supporting it until we have those. We haven't got the finished architectural plans yet.
So has a monitoring well gone in?
Excuse me?
Has a monitoring well been put in to say, okay, where's groundwater, to check the level of
We
groundwater?
can put one in.
Yeah, because that would be a concern for the house where it's so close to the pond. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to think, oh yeah, and then there's erosion on the driveway. I don't know if there's any proposal for erosion control also too, coming down that steep driveway.
Erosion control?
Yeah, that driveway was
Starting to
eroded.
Gully
Yeah.
out in some areas.
Yeah.
Long driveway.
So those are my questions based on my site visit and looking at the plans. So I know you guys might echo some of that.
I'll go to Aaron next.
I was not able to go this
Oh,
one, so.
okay. Any questions based on what you've heard or looking at these plans?
No, other than what's already been pointed out about the court.
Okay. Sandy?
No, I have no other.
No. I have a little bit of concern about that massive tree that's right at the corner of the house. I think it was a maple, if I'm not mistaken.
That one
It's huge.
multi-trunked.
Yeah, it's got like about 12 trunks to
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's,
That's right here. Yeah, that's right.
it's 72-inch
Right
tree?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in excavating out, and you said you're not sure yet if this is going to be on a slab or you're going to try to get a foundation.
Right.
Basement into it, I would think you're going to run into an abundance of root structure when you start to excavate fairly close to that tree. And I'm a little concerned about compromising that tree.
I understand. The footprint of the house is actually being moved away from
It's
the
coming,
tree.
yeah, coming back.
And it does have a foundation underneath it right now. How deep it is, I don't know.
Right.
But it's on something right now.
And the tank itself,
But we can put like I said, the proposed house is moving back from the original
yeah,
footprint.
it looked like it was coming back a few feet.
It's going upland more.
Looks like it's beyond the 100-foot offset.
It's
tank.
The septic tank's beyond, and
That's out of our jurisdiction?
it's out of our jurisdiction, but the records does show it was replaced in 2014, I believe.
It was
So 2013,
somewhere in that
2014,
range,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But that would come under Board of Health.
Yeah, it's under Board of Health,
Right,
yeah.
because they're 300 feet.
Yep. Yeah.
So has this been proposed to?
We've
Yeah, I don't know.
applied for a
You've
variance
applied?
to the Board of Health, and we're waiting.
Oh,
for a
you're
meeting.
waiting to hear back? Okay. 'cause they-
Excuse me?
The Board of Health didn't have any comments on this project for the commission?
We're waiting for the meeting. We've
You're
applied
waiting
for the
meeting?
variance.
Okay, okay. Usually they'll say that. Didn't say anything, so.
I don't have any other questions that haven't already been asked.
Oh, one other question. On the plan, it shows all the mitigation plantings. It looks like it's just on the, which would be on the east side of the property and nothing on the west side of the property? And it's like,
Yeah.
should that be evenly spaced out or? Spread
Yeah,
out?
I have
Spread apart?
some comments on that.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, we can confront that. The owner suggested to try to do all the mitigation on one side, so we tried to find that, and we took that area and used the mitigation in that area. But if that's a concern, then we'll have to confront it. So you'd like to see mitigation planning on both sides?
Yeah, but before that, my comments were, in regard to the biggest elephant in the room, which is the bocce court. So
Right.
the bocce court is within entirely, well, not almost entirely within the 100-foot.
It's mostly within the
60%
zone.
of it is. So my recommendation was to have that entirely removed because it was never permitted, and I think if it were proposed to be in that area, if it had gone through the proper channels, it wouldn't have been allowed to have gone there, given how many more opportunities there are to establish that on the property outside of wetlands jurisdiction. So my recommendation is to come back with a revised plan showing a relocation of that bocce completely outside of the 100-foot setback.
Okay.
And that entire area be revegetated back to similarly what it once was, because when we went back and looked at GIS maps, that whole area where the bocce court is was vegetated with trees and shrubs.
Okay.
So, and we can see that on GIS imagery. So that will then again lead into mitigation where you can spread it out more on both sides of the property, but that needs to be dealt with first to determine, how much planting you're really going to have to do. And then you can look at where those plantings go. But that needs to be dealt with first, is showing a plan, revegetating that area and getting rid of the bocce court, get it outside the 100-foot, or I don't care where they go with it, but not within jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No other questions from commissioners? Anyone in the public that would like to comment or question? Doesn't appear to be. Any other further comments, Drew?
No further comments.
Okay.
We all set on the nitrogen loading calcs?
Oh, those, did anyone have any questions on those? They were submitted.
They were submitted.
This is 4.75?
So it meets standard.
4.75.
They were well below the 19 number.
They're well below 19.
Yeah, the property itself is fairly large, and it does have quite a bit of vegetation, even though there is a tennis court near the road.
Right.
It's a big property with vegetation, I don't think any impervious surfaces at all.
No.
No, so
No,
the
even the
nitrogen
driveway's
calc
off.
came quite
The
down.
tennis court up in the corner.
Yeah, oh, that's true, yeah, the tennis court,
Yeah.
that's it, so.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd accept the motion for a continuance so that we can see these revised plans.
Okay.
October 19th at 6:12 PM. Would October 19th be sufficient time to?
Yes, we're
revise?
just waiting
Yeah.
for that reply back from the Natural Heritage.
And also the determination of what the foundation's going to be like.
Oh,
You
okay,
wanna show
so-
that?
Yeah, want me to list them in the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I get back as far as the 19th? Because I'm waiting for the finalized architectural plans. When I
You want, we could pencil in the 19th, and then you can contact us if it's going to be later than that. We can
Okay,
continue it again.
Yeah.
Or if you want to go straight to the next hearing.
We have to
which
do
is
November.
November 3rd, I believe.
November 2nd at 6:03?
Up to you.
that might be the better
Okay.
way to go.
Okay.
That way we'll have time to put everything together.
November 2nd.
So November 2nd, thank you.
6:03, you said?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to continue 42 Wheeler Road for Marcio de Jesus to November 2nd at 6:03. And the items to discuss is remove the bocce court entirely out of the buffer zone, the delineation from the inland delineation, is that the correct term?
Yeah, delineate the bordering land subject to.
Bordering land subject to flooding, yeah.
Bordering land subject to flooding. New mitigation plan that spreads out the mitigation across the property, the groundwater level, the driveway erosion, and the type of foundation proposed.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Aaron. Anything else commissioners would like to mention or add? We're good? Okay, I'll take a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yes.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we'll continue that to November 2nd, 6:03.
Okay, thank
You're
you
all
very
set
much.
with the list of, you're all set with the list that,
Yes,
great, thank you.
thank you.
We've got the folks here from Refuge, the Business Center.
The extension.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah.
I'll take the extension here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move to the 621 hearing, 353 Simon's Narrow Road and 1 Mute Swan Circle, Simon's Narrows LLC, and William R. Cumming. Request to extend order of conditions number 43-3024. Representative is Crawford Land Management. It's a request for an extension. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Lauren Taylor with Crawford Land Management. We're asking for a 3-year extension for this permit. It was permitted in 2020, and it's set to expire this November. The initial treatment, so it's for 13,000 square feet of Phragmites management. And it was initially treated in 2020, and we've done treatments for 2 years in 2021 and 2022. Overall, the Phragmites management has been very effective. We have about 80 to 90% control of the frag. The owner just wanted to request an extension so that that permit doesn't lapse this November and so that we can get a little bit better control of the frag. So that's why we're requesting the extension.
Okay, thank you. That was November 2020. Any questions? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, this is one that I talked to Dan last hearing about. This is where there was a lot of erosion at the bottom on that Simon's Narrow, and it was flowing into the Sawmarsh.
The DPW is aware, so they're
Okay.
on it, I guess I'll say.
I just saw it when I saw the
Yeah,
location, and I thought I'd
When
bring
I
it
went
up.
down there the other day, there was even more sand at the very bottom.
Yeah.
That was building up. So they are aware. How they're doing with their stormwater management plans are to be found out, so.
Okay, all right. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Any other questions? No? I don't have any. Anybody from the public? No? Questions? Drew, would you like to
I
comment?
think
on
it's pretty straightforward. It's been a successful campaign so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say about 80 to 90% control of the frag. I mean, it's just very small stalks coming back.
sure.
Yeah, it's very minimal resprouting.
Okay. It's weird, kind of typically in these, I mean, you've already filed for it, but usually this comes with kind of like in that order, ongoing treatment,
Right.
as necessary.
Right,
to
and when we go for
eradicate, but-
compliance, we'll
but
include that as
it's
a
fine,
request.
For an extension, just to cover that base, so,
Yeah.
yeah. That's no other comments.
Okay. I would accept a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for 353 Simon's Narrow Road and 1 Mute Swan Circle, Simon Narrows LLC, William R. Cumming, to grant a 3-year extension for Phragmites removal and management.
Okay, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Any further questions or discussion from commissioners? No? All right, take a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No issues with the COC inspection on that last
Okay.
agenda item, it passed.
That's all set?
No.
Great. All right, now we come back to, want to go to the Friends?
Yeah. Patiently waiting all night.
So patient, thank you.
Sorry about that. Welcome to our world. So we have the Friends of Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge here to speak about their proposed visitor center at 966 Falmouth Road. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for, thanks for having us and entertaining this. I'm Glenn Davis. I'm president of the Friends of the Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge. I want to thank the commission for listening to us tonight. Thanks to Dan for putting together the overview and doing the maps. That was really helpful. I just want to make a few kind of very brief points, kind of bring up to date on how we got to where we are today. As I'm sure all of you know, the Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge was established close to 30 years ago. Over those close to 30 years, a visitor center has been discussed. There was, in fact, the visitor center was the reason for the establishment, or one of the key reasons for the establishment of the refuge. Back then, in the early days, there was a location on Route 28 just north of the South Cape Resort that was designated for a visitor center. Never really happened. About a year ago, we reopened discussions with the partners, kind of bringing this back to life and seeing what we could do with it. Our goals were first really to have a home base for the refuge and for the Friends group, which we still do not have. A small building, some office space, storage, an area for public engagement, possibly a nature store, installing some outdoor informational kiosks, a pavilion for partner activities, a greenhouse for propagation of plants for pollinator gardens, for some of the town gardens, as well as partner needs. And we reviewed and considered several sites, and in the end came kind of full circle back to the Route 28 site. And one of our site visits, we parked in the parking lot at 966 Falmouth Road, and someone, I don't remember who it was, but someone said, "What about this site?" And it really kind of fit the bill. It avoided a lot of the challenges that we had for the site just to the north. It's got an access road, it's got parking, access to utilities, so it really seemed like a really good fit. So that's kind of where we're at. And the Mashpee Refuge was established as a partnership. It's very unique among national wildlife refuges in that sense. And we see this as a great opportunity to work with the town to foster that partnership. The town and the Conservation Commission are both partners of the refuge. And we'd like to see this dream from close to 30 years ago become a reality. So what we're looking for tonight is really to see if we can get a vote of support from the commission, listen to any concerns that you might have, and provide any guidance to us as far as how we can move this forward and what needs to be done at this point. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for filling us in. So the decision is made. This is where you want to place your visitor center. What would be your next step in terms of financing or?
Yeah, we still have some work to do. We have to obviously flesh out the design, what type of building, whether we've considered kind of an oversized shed, a modular building, greenhouse. We actually had some greenhouse designs. And also funding, obviously, that's a big one. We are going to explore CPC funding. We probably won't be able to do that in time for their timeline for the Springtown meeting, but hopefully we'd have that together for the deadline for next fall's town meeting. as well as other sources. The Friends have some funds. We could probably get some funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and possibly other partners.
Who's the owner of 966 Falmouth Road?
Well, the town is.
This is town?
And
town?
Yeah.
our
Yes.
understanding that it's kind of in limbo. It's not.
Yeah, so this is town open space in 1997. It was acquired due to a tax lien on the property. And since then, it has sat in conservation open space. On the map, it shows it as undeclared.
Undeclared?
Yeah, so it's not land bank, it's just conservation open space under control of the CONSCOM currently.
Yeah, tax title.
I'll also add, we did actually meet with the town manager, I forget when that was, several weeks ago. He had no concerns about moving forward. We understand we probably need to also go before the select board and ultimately
Yeah.
town meeting.
So we want to make sure we get all the support we can for this. So the CONSCOM is first, the select board would be next after that. The town manager had one stipulation, basically for any building or modular home that goes in. He wants it to be, not wants it, he would recommend it to be not the culture, but the way of the Cape, like a Cape.
Form.
Cape style,
Yeah.
you know, whatever it may be, whether it's cedar shingles or things like that. He doesn't want to have to see something that's not unparticular to the Cape. He wants something that is very common around here that will stay with the character of place. So I think that's very easy to accomplish as well.
Absolutely.
So,
No modern contemporary, you know.
No.
Gothic is out.
No skyscraper, no.
Gothic,
And even a shed, I took a ride over just this week to, I think it's called the Shed Place by the Rotary.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got actually some nice-looking buildings, and they can be, various sizes, configured with, full-size doors and windows, and they can be insulated. You can start small. You can kind of scale it up to something which are, they're very, very attractive-looking Cape Cod-style buildings.
And also for this location, what's really prime about this is it sits in the middle of two massive parcels that are in the wildlife refuge system. On the other side of 28 is the Quashnet River woodlands. So that is DCR, that is town of Mashpee, that is multiple entities that own multiple parcels throughout there that go all the way up to 151. So that's a good access. And then on the east side, it's quite the trek through the woods, but there is the Pine Barrens. And that has its own ecosystem all to itself that is very particular and fantastic to see. So if someone were to go there, they could get an orientation of the entire refuge system from both Falmouth and Mashpee, and then either take their car to another section or just start right from there and go and start exploring. This would also give the town an opportunity to have a kiosk there with a small pavilion so that we could provide educational material, also maps of the properties as well, which the Friends do a fantastic job of doing. So it's a benefit for the Friends group and a benefit for the town at the same time. And with this, I know the Friends group has made it one of their main concentrations for native plantings, which are more than ever needed in this town or in Cape Cod in general. And it would give a prime opportunity for those bright green areas to be rehauled into some native beds for examples of what can be accomplished on your own property. So.
Great. Terrific. And I know there's several people on town committees and boards that have a wealth of knowledge in form-based architecture, for the Cape. They've been looking at a lot of models for affordable housing as 40B, becomes a reality more so for Mashpee. So there's a lot of people that I'm sure will pitch in to give you some good advice with that.
One other option, we haven't done this yet, but we'd like to open up a dialogue with some of the abutters. There's the developers to what's called Leclerc Village, which is going up right behind it. There's South Cape Resort. Whether we could have some type of access paths that actually lead over to the refuge trails and add trails through the Pine Barrens, that would also be beneficial in terms of connecting all the pieces and kind of tying things together.
So this is further down than where the Red Brook Culvert has let go, if you follow that back. Is that? where
So
you're
it's before you hit Red Brook Road on the left. So you pass by the tennis club.
Right,
and
South
then it's-
Cape
South
Resort
Cape,
thing.
yeah, and behind that is Leclerc Village is being built.
Yeah.
And then just past that on the left is where this parcel is.
Yeah,
But
it's exactly a quarter mile. If you're heading towards Falmouth,
Yeah.
it's exactly a quarter mile from the
From the
town line.
Town line, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Would this connect to what that gentleman was talking about earlier from Algonquin about connecting trails on the west side of Mashpee?
That is a
That's
hike.
151.
Further away.
Yeah, that's going to be
it's
north
further
of
up.
151, unfortunately, yeah.
Different location,
Yeah,
but definitely still an opportunity for trail system connectivity here into the refuge. Long time coming.
Yes.
Almost 30 years. Yeah. And it's been a long evening, I should add.
and we're not done. You're more than welcome to stay when we're finished with your discussion. Okay, anything else, Sandy? No? I would accept a motion then that we take a vote to endorse the project. If that's what you would like us to do?
Absolutely, we're looking for the commission's support.
Yeah.
I make a motion to endorse the Friends.
At 966 Falmouth Road. Proposed Visitor Center. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other discussion? Okay, Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So we will get a letter together and get that for you. That I guess, would it go to the select board? Is it?
Yeah, probably.
I think that's probably our next step.
Yes.
Yeah,
it will.
Is that where you'll be going next to present there?
Yeah, so I'll be scheduling a time for you to present before the select board, and then that letter would be for them just as letter of support.
Great.
And we can forward that to the selectman's office prior to that meeting, so they have it
Yes.
in advance.
Okay,
Terrific.
thank you
Well,
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
And thank you, ladies. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, back up to the top, the Whedon Landry petition articles.
Yeah,
I don't know.
nobody present tonight. We tried to reach out and
She's not
no
intent on
response.
coming back. I know Brian came at,
Yeah.
was there our last meeting or the one before that?
Last
It was the last meeting, and then the day after, I spoke to Brian on the phone to allow him to know the concerns and the non-concerns and support for the property across the street. And he didn't say in favor or didn't give his opinion. He just said, I will relay the message.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah, I think he's more interested in the article for the cemetery.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely. He just wanted to be ahead of the ball, so he was asking, that's all, which is fine.
Talia Landry that's
Is
working
the
on the other
petition.
one.
Yeah, she's the one
Yeah.
over here. Yeah.
Well, maybe she'll ask to come
Yeah.
at a future time. And I know there was a question that was sent in about the 150-foot buffer zone that was
Yes.
approved at town meeting. I guess we're close to that.
So the 25th?
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, 25th, Monday.
Monday.
25.
Yeah. So I've worked on revising our buffer zone
Changing numbers?
documentation. Yeah, changing from 100 to 150.
Yep.
So it's really just your decision as far as when you want to roll this out to affect, future permits,
Right.
future permit applications. I think there might have been some informal discussion about, allowing some opportunity for it to kind of filter out into, into the public.
Kind of like
for-
when we
when we did the
change a
regs.
regulation, I think we went a couple of weeks or something. And
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the gate closes and anything comes in after that.
Yeah, so we could do this.
And I've already been informing contractors
Yeah, we've
about
been,
this as well.
everyone's been given.
Yeah.
a heads up.
Well, everybody's got to know it's coming because it was approved at the May
Yeah.
town
In fact,
meeting.
everyone's asking us.
They are very much
telling
asking.
them.
What happened to that 150?
It's more like, when do I have to apply for it? That's what it is.
We'll be notified by town clerk's office, is that the way that works?
Correct, yeah, as soon as she gets the final word, she'll let us know. And then, yeah, it can go forward from that point, at any point.
So I know it was 4 to 6 months, so it looks like a 4-month rather than 6, right?
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah, it came around quick.
Yeah.
good.
And the land swap too, if you recall, remember we had that other article about the property on 3 Santuit Lane. This is just an aside, but they had encroached onto Concom land. There's Concom land on either side of the property.
Right.
Half the garage is on Concom
Yeah.
land. So as a compromise, other than trying to remove structure like that, was they donated equal square footage of naturally vegetated portion of their lot to us, to Concom swap. And it immediately abuts existing conservation, and so it worked out beautifully. And
Okay.
that's, according to State Representative Vieira, he said that was met with positivity, and he thinks it will also be accepted. So we'll just have to get surveying done to redelineate that side of the Concom land. It's gonna have that additional, I think it's like 1,900 square feet or something.
Yeah. Great. Because that has to go through the same process as Article 97?
Does,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Does that have to go before town meeting as well?
That's a good question. I'll have to ask town
I
council.
know there was like 6 criteria in Article
Yeah.
97 lands. That was
It may very well have to, yeah. It's changing boundaries.
Yeah.
So, or we're losing boundary too.
Well, it's an equal swap. I doubt there'd be any
Yeah.
resistance to that. You might even get an extra 3 or 4 square inches or something,
If we're lucky.
if we're lucky.
So do we want to set like a date for the rollout for this 150, if you're looking at 2 weeks from now? Just to make it official,
Assuming we get it, right?
assuming we get it, yes.
You want to wait till we get it and just set the date at the next meeting?
For, set,
Rollout?
oh, set that as the date for the rollout, the next meeting following the date of approval, final approval?
Yeah, you want to look at filing deadlines?
Next meeting is
I
what,
think-
October 5th, right?
I think what we should do is pick one of our filing deadlines, notice publication deadlines. That's too early, 6. How about October 20th?
October 20th, yeah. That's perfect.
Assuming we get it on the 25th. If it gets hung up, then.
Right. Deb seems pretty.
Does that
confident
give
it's
you
gonna-
enough time on
Oh,
the
yeah.
regulations?
Yeah.
Or I should say us, we do that at the subcommittee meeting?
Yeah.
If not, November 3rd would be the last.
Then we're gonna go through each regulation and change, but that's local home rule. To change
Right.
the 150 language in every regulation where currently 100 is referenced.
And then we have to have hearings on every one of those?
I think we can
We
do
just
it,
do
I'm gonna
them
talk
at
to them
home,
and see if we can do it
batch.
collectively as one hearing to apply to multiple regulations. Wherever 100 feet is mentioned, you change it to 150.
Yeah, all we're doing is
We've already done
making
it
the
in the
regulations
bylaw.
adhere to what the town voted
Yeah,
for.
but it's just, it's like, it's just, what's the word I'm looking for? Simple, straightforward.
Mechanics.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Okay, then let's tentatively go with October 20th as a filing deadline for the 150 buffer.
Okay.
And,
You can, if you want to have a motion for that, or if you just want to just
yeah,
make
I
it.
think it would probably be a good thing. So let's, I'll be open to a motion to set October 20th as the implementation date for the 150-foot buffer, assuming that we get notification on September 25. Was it 5? Yeah.
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second? Thank you, Aaron. Any other questions, discussions, comments on that before I call for the vote? Okay, Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So that carries, and we'll go with October 20th, unless it gets hung up, but I don't think that's going to happen. Great. And we'll be the second one on the Cape?
No, first.
First one
Third.
on the Cape.
Fourth in the state to expand buffer zone to 150 feet. So you've got Dover, Watertown, Brookline, and one other, or maybe that's it. Dover, Watertown, Brookline, now Mashpee. We're the fourth in the state, first on Cape Cod.
Wow.
For first coastal town in Massachusetts to expand to 100.
So that's one baby step for water quality. There you go.
Yep.
And there really are a lot of little, not that this is little, but small incremental steps, rather than just sitting around waiting for that wastewater treatment plant to turn on. I mean, it's going to, but.
Yeah, that's
there's a lot of
exactly
things that we
what they
can do.
asked us to do.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Okay, discussion on commission purview and review criterion?
Do you want to hold off on this until we get full quorum?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Can
That
I
makes
mention
sense.
something in
Yes.
that might be added into that?
Sure.
So this whole discussion that we had tonight, and I know we've had it in previous meetings about Regulation 25 and all these new large homes going in
Yes.
Regulation 2. And it seems like we're at odds with each other a bit, we're not in a full agreement.
Yeah.
And I think as a board and as the staff, we should just come up with, I know what the regulations say, and you said it, Drew, and one of the regulations isn't 100% clear on it, and conflicting information. I think we ought to come up with one criteria and say, okay, any, projects coming in front of us, here's our steps we need to take.
Yeah.
Are we going to allow this, or do we say, like, okay, the one in Papaneset Island, that was a large increase.
Right.
And it got turned down. This one is a large increase. And we're going to have more mitigations, great, but I'm saying, are we going to limit to, does the bylaw say we limit to the square footage that is there now, and say, we can't expand upon that in the land subject to coastal storm flowage, or can we expand it to a certain
So,
percentage?
I think if you, and this is just
I'm
my-
just a little confused
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that,
no,
yeah.
I totally understand. I think that if you limit a building structure to a square footage, how are you going to tie that into justification as far as how it impacts this performance standards? So the functionality of the wetlands that apply to a given lot. I think that's being a bit arbitrary if you say you can't build beyond 1,500 square feet, 1,200 square feet, because you have to tie it to a rationale based on the performance standards for the Wetlands Protection Act. I'm not saying you can't do that, but that's what you need to think about. If that's going to be your criterion, saying, setting a standard, you can't expand more than 900 square feet. Okay, well, why?
Right.
You just have to be prepared to address the why in that scenario, because the applicant can turn around and say, I believe that's an arbitrary figure, I'm going to appeal, and they will win if you don't justify why that square footage.
Right, I'm just saying, what does the regulation allow us to do? It seems like there's
It doesn't,
conflict in
it doesn't really, all it says currently is, it has standards for land subject to coastal storm flow. As far as how much, the main criterion that I see, the main standard that I see is retention of native vegetation on a lot. Or how much, based on a lot's square footage, how much vegetation should be left on that lot, or recapitulated on that lot, recreated. That seems to be the main standard for land subject to coastal storm flow. So if you've got, a 30,000 square foot lot, 30% has to remain in a naturally vegetated state. 20,000, 20%. 5 to 10,000, I think it's 10%. I forgot what the precise ranges are. So that's the current standard. Or there's many other standards under Reg 25 too. It's kind of dizzying regulation. There's a lot of different standards that
Is there a way that we can simplify it and put it on like a bold type statement saying, okay, is it, here's a criteria that we ought to look at as a commission to say, okay, here's what you need, here's what an applicant needs to do, and, here's the criteria that we go on. Because, I'm reading, I understand it, but it seems like you're talking about Regulation 2, and you're talking about Regulation 25, and.
Well, he's referencing the bylaw
I'm
172-2.
the bylaw calling a
Right.
floodplain a resource area.
Right.
Every lot is different, and take, for example, lots that they'll propose these, I'm trying to think of the term, quick for drainage basins. If it looks to me, when I go onto a lot and I'm looking at the entire lot is land subject to coastal flow, and I'm looking and there's 1,000 square foot more development going into it, and then I look at the neighboring lots and you see a gradient that's going this way, you know where the water is going to be displaced. So I come at it from a viewpoint of saying 172.2 says that land subject to coastal flow is a resource area. The mitigation ratio is 2 to 1. So if you're going to have 1,000 square feet, you've got to come up with 2,000 square feet of mitigation. You're taking up flood storage capability. That's where I'm coming from, and that's the way it's written.
Yeah. So then we have to address one or the other so that they coincide and they're not conflicting with each other. Because you do have that language under Reg 25 that says the 100-foot buffer zone, in so many words, doesn't apply to land subject to coastal storm flow based on legally altered conditions under a notice of intent. So you got one regulation that says one thing and then the bylaw that says another. Doesn't matter to me which one, ultimately ends up being, the one that is the final form of how things go in the flood zone. But it's conflicting right now.
And the waters get
That's where
even
maybe
more.
where I'm getting confused. So
Yeah.
I've gone through it a few times
Yeah,
already.
I mean, I've always, in my entire time with the town, and every commission that I've worked with, we've never applied a buffer zone to land subject to coastal storm flow. Never, in any application. Always treated it as a resource area, just like any other resource area. But as far as it having a buffer zone, and we've even got Excel documents that list every single property in the flood zone, none of them have any associated buffer zone. There's no documentation of it, there's no effort to make it so. The only thing that I see are two different conflicting kind of statutes, one regulatory, one in the bylaw. Bylaw says it has a 100-foot buffer zone. Maybe that was a typo, maybe it was a typo in Regulation 25, but you can't have it both ways. That's the bottom line. Got to fix one of them and come up with standards.
We've looked at 25, and that goes all the way back to before you
Yeah,
came on
2000,
board.
at least 2005. Yeah.
Right. So, who knows? And
So-
then
So how
it
do
gets
we-
even worse because you step out of our purview and go over to zoning, and now you've got a lot that's totally floodplain. How do you increase the footprint? There's no upland.
Right.
174-31 doesn't allow it. So,
But then you're saying that according to Regulation 2, with the lots under coastal storm flowage, you're saying we need a 2-to-1 mitigation. That's what the bylaw says, right? And then
No.
So you're getting into a different regulation now,
Different regulation.
mitigation, which is regulation
Mitigation.
12.
Well-
Regulation, there is no regulation 2 applying to
Right.
this scenario. It's 172-2
Two,
of the
yeah.
bylaw.
Yeah.
You got regulation 12, which deals with mitigation, and you got regulation 25, which deals with land subject to coastal storm flow. Regulation 12 mitigation permeates through all
Right.
other regulatory requirements. It's mitigation that applies to everything. So, and in Regulation 12, it says if you're not applying for a waiver request, which means you're not proposing to move any structure closer to the water than what's existing, or the wetlands, then it's across-the-board 2-to-1 ratio for mitigation.
Okay.
Whether you're in the 0 to 50, whether 50 to 100.
Doesn't matter where you
it's
are.
2-to-1, automatically, without argument or debate.
Right. Okay.
So that's what they missed. That was pretty clear-cut.
Yeah.
So the next question is, does land subject to coastal storm flow have a buffer zone? And the bylaw says clearly it does, along with every other resource area that we protect. There's all of these resource areas
But we haven't-
cumulatively, and the 100-foot buffer zone associated with them, and land subject to coastal storm flow is stated right in there. But then you get to Reg 25, and it says something completely different. So that needs to be fixed pretty quickly, because that's just gonna bounce the applicant around, and they're not gonna know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's
Rule
what's,
against another.
I think that's what's confusing me.
Yeah.
'Cause-
but on a lot that's totally land subject to coastal flow, it doesn't matter. And forget about buffer zone. You're in the resource area. The whole lot is resource
Right,
area.
right.
So if
Yeah.
you if you have a house that's 1,000 square feet and you make it 3,000 square feet, you better come up with 4,000 square feet of mitigation because it's 2-to-1. And
Right.
some people just wouldn't have that amount of space. I
And
calculate.
I think that makes
I
sense,
don't want
because
to
you
talk
really do
about a
wanna-
hearing that's
yeah,
closed.
Yeah, I know.
I don't want to get into a
it's-
specific hearing.
Get into it more,
Right.
but you really do want to limit development in the flood zone. Because
Right,
once you take up
right.
flood storage capacity, there is no such thing as additional flood storage capacity in the flood zone. It doesn't exist.
Right.
The water's going somewhere.
And now
You're just
but-
losing it. That's
Yeah,
it.
and the Cape Cod Commission said they're just coming out with some new guidelines for flood zone. I don't know, haven't seen it, but I just read the little blurb on it, yeah. So, yeah, okay.
Is the hazard
That's it.
mitigation plan looking at any of this? I know they've met once or twice.
They are, and pretty soon the zoning article is going to go before town meeting.
Right.
No fill in the flood
No
zone.
fill in the flood zone. That's
So
coming
that's going to
up.
have a dramatic difference on
Yeah.
everything moving forward, so.
And we've got to really buckle down and look at it because the water's coming up. These storms, they're not getting any easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that because.
Yeah, it's clear as mud, right?
Yeah, it's like, when you guys are talking earlier, I said, okay, I'm confused all.
You could spend hours reading it, then you flip back and look at this, and this is arguing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And with that, the updates, unless.
Yeah,
something-
there is one thing I just wanted to mention, just in preparation for the next meeting. Horsley Witten Group is coming in for the ecological restoration notice of intent for the Choptank Bogs. That will be at our next meeting. I'm very excited about that because that means that's the last step before construction, should everyone approve it. And that's really exciting. 11 acres of wetland, 11 acres of formerly active cranberry bog being converted to wetlands is huge.
Is that a 25% plan that?
It's 75%.
75?
No, 50%.
50.
Yeah, 50%.
Because I think the last time he came was 25. and we
That
said-
was Quashnet.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
Choptank's,
Okay, that makes sense.
Choptank's come a longer way than that. I think that was it. Yeah, that was the only one I really wanted to highlight. Yeah.
Okay, then. Unless there's anything else pressing?
Oh,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Just making sure, Dan? No?
We'll have to have signatures. People come in or we'll come to you to sign. We just couldn't get them in time.
Oh,
Stacy.
You're going to have
I'll get
donuts
to
and
you.
everything tomorrow, right?
Yeah, of course.
I'll let you know tomorrow morning first thing. I just looked at it now, and they're not the
We'll
right.
figure it out a way to get to you or you come to us for signing.
No signatures, but coffee and donuts. This place fills up with them on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gold mine. Today was pizza.
Okay, so I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Aaron. Any discussion on that? None? Vote, Steve?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sandy? I vote yes as well. We're out at 8:34.
On air.
We're always on air.
Trish, just to clarify, what is the update? Which one of the items? Is it-
Oh, I'll show you.